Welcome to Football Conspiracies.
I'm Jared Cole.
And I'm Jared Rabinovich.
This week's episode, the Paycor Stadium Curse, or why Bengals fans are fucking crazy.
Do you want to hop right into it?
Yeah, I do, because this report that I saw, although it's not new news, it was the first time I came across it, and it's definitely going to be the first time anyone's ever told this to you.
That's great, but before we get into it, can I just have a gripe with it's not new news? If it's not new news, then it's just olds?
No, come on, that's
I'm
not how
putting
it
it out there.
works.
I'm putting it out there. It's irrelevant, I digress, but
Okay, anyway.
it's something for the audience to chew on.
So, this is via ESPN Radio New York. Okay, I just have a little bit. I don't have any more information, so you're not allowed to ask any meaningful questions.
Understood.
Comedian and notorious New York Jets fan Larry David says he called then GM Mike McKagan before the 2018 NFL draft and told him to draft Lamar Jackson. McKagan then laughed at his suggestion.
Wait. You tell me I can't ask you any questions?
I don't have any more information, but yeah, that's what Larry David was saying. Get Lamar Jackson, and the Jets were like, you're funny.
Well, Larry David knows ball, first of all. That's just a fact.
Apparently so.
Apparently so. But that like reminds me of that video of like do you remember this? The son of the Washington Commanders owner or GM telling him, "Oh, you got to draft James Williams."
Oh, yeah. And it was the Giants.
Oh, yes,
it was the Giants.
Right.
He was like, "If you were to draft, who would you take?" And he was like, Jaden Daniels.
And look what happened.
He did not take Jaden Daniels.
Exactly. And I mean, I guess now we know two things: listen to the Giants owner's son, and listen to Larry David.
Yeah.
I mean, on some things.
Yeah, all right. So, Jared, what curse I know it's a curse.
We did already film the intro.
The intro. So, that's
yes, we are going back to back with curse episodes, which is pretty exciting stuff, I would say.
Fuck yeah, who doesn't love a good curse?
Yeah, and this one is definitely like a pretty unknown one as far as I'm concerned. The research for this episode began abruptly, suddenly, without any notice. I lay on my couch, perusing the content on offer at the esoteric website known as youtube.com.
Never heard of it.
You're not familiar?
No.
Makes sense. It's pretty deep in the depths. When, unceremoniously, I was roused from my lackadaisical state of doom scrolling upon hearing this sound. Immediately, I thought of two things. One, the NFL gods have come down from the heavens to gift me with an episode idea. No effort needed. And two, I really hope we don't get copyright struck for that music.
Well, it sounded like it was like a remix, so no one really owned that music.
I mean...
We hope.
But what is this video, is the real question. I know some of you may have been excited by the prospect of the beloved Mario theme song mashed up with the Me theme music, but I can promise you that this theory has nothing to do with any fictional Italian plumbers. Rather, this song was used to overlay something much more sinister. As I began reading the words scrolling across the screen, I could not help but be enwrapped. I also could not help thinking that this was a horrible song choice, one that is insensitive, bordering on outright offensive. This video was released by the YouTuber Fierce and Furious on January 5th, 2023. J. Cole, do these details, or the date in particular, give you any clue as to what this video might be about?
I mean, that's end of season. I don't know. Something happened 2023. Wasn't that... I couldn't tell you.
I mean, something definitely happened 2023.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a moment. The video in question was titled The Cursed NFL Stadium, and it lays out the case that Paycor Stadium, home of the Cincinnati Bengals, is cursed. In the past, we have covered many curses, and one cursed stadium in particular. This was the FedEx Field curse. As far as I'm concerned, the FedEx Field curse is a bona fide classic when it comes to NFL conspiracy theories. It is well known, often talked about, and somehow manages to rear its ugly head once every few years or so. However, after all this time studying the NFL's wide range of conspiracies and curses, I have yet to stumble across this one. There's actually much more evidence than I would have originally anticipated, considering it had been a complete mystery to me before this. But without further ado, let's get into the evidence as laid out in this aforementioned video. Like I said, all this video contains is visual cues, so I'll read them out as the serenading sound of Super Mario Bros. Level 1-1 soothes you, just as the creator of this video intended. This NFL field is cursed. It has seen the 4 biggest injuries in the NFL. If you cannot tell yet, the field is Paycor Stadium. This is where the Bengals play. The first injury occurred when Antonio Brown got hit. He got rocked by Vontaze Burfict and was knocked out. Brown was never the same after this head injury. Next, Ryan Shazier was paralyzed on Monday Night Football at Paycor. Shazier never played again after this injury. Next, we have the Tua Tagovailoa concussion. This was extremely scary as he began fencing and was also knocked out. Many believe Tua should be done with football forever. And then on the last Monday Night Football, we saw the scariest injury of them all, when Damar Hillman experienced cardiac arrest. Damar Hillman needed 9 minutes of CPR on this field and they restored his heartbeat. However, his future is left in question. He had to be rushed to the local hospital for survival. He is now continuing to progress and is awake. Prayers for Damar Hamlin. Keep fighting. Prayer emojis.
Yeah, so, first of all, that was the first of many concussions to come to his way. That probably should have been a note for him.
A career-ending concussion? Yeah, I would say so.
But, I mean, we digress to the next point of Damar Hillman.
Yes.
Those I's and A's a little too close on the keyboard for him.
Which is also crazy, because, he misspelt Damar Hamlin twice as Damar Hillman. And then
spelt it right at the end.
Yeah, so he knows what the dude's name is.
Yeah. And yeah, now I see why this video was posted when it was.
Exactly. So, do you also see why I preface this with maybe this was a little bit insensitive?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for reference, not only is the video speaking about these horrible injuries over the Mario X Me theme song, it is also showing a blurred out version of the injuries in the background. You can't see them properly, but they're there. It then goes on to misspell Damar Hamlin's name, like we mentioned, twice, and then implores us to pray for him. This video was released less than 72 hours after the injury took place.
That's wild.
Yeah,
That's insane that was going through someone's mind,
Now you must understand why when I was scrolling through YouTube and I hit upon this, I was like, well, I guess this is an episode.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is crazy indeed. But now let's dig a little further into this theory. So we can better understand the evidence of the curse, I'm now going to play a different video. This one is far more succinct and lays out a little more evidence. This video is called This NFL Stadium is Cursed, posted by the YouTuber 610 Football, and is narrated by a man who looks a little like a heavier Lando Norris.
This NFL stadium might be cursed. Paycor Stadium, home of the Bengals, has seen some of the most infamous injuries in NFL history. 2005 AFC wildcard, Carson Palmer tore his ACL on the first play. 2016 AFC wildcard, we had the Vontaze Burfict hit to Antonio Brown's head. Then the next year, Ryan Shazier went down with his career-ending spinal injury. And just this year, we saw Tua's scary concussion and Damar Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest all on the same field.
Oof, those injuries were brutal
Yeah,
to
like,
watch.
and this time it wasn't blurred out. Like, you actually saw them.
Yeah.
I forgot how tough some of, like, the Tua one, I totally forgot, like, after his concussion, his fingers were all, like, clenched weird. Like, that was terrifying.
Yeah, but even, like, Shazier just, like, leading with his head there, like, oh, it just...
And the Antonio Brown one is, like, particularly disgusting, because, like, he was so unfairly targeted there. Like, it was such a dirty hit. Like, we'll definitely get into this a little bit later, but all of those are, like, so tough to watch. Like, in the realm of the toughest to watch injuries in NFL history, as far as I'm concerned.
Those are some pretty bad ones.
Yeah, like, horrible stuff has happened at this field, like, for real. But now that this theory has been, like, properly articulated by Orlando Norris-looking friend, what are your impressions?
Yeah, I would say that this curse might have some validity to it. But also, injuries happen in football, and so if you highlight all the injuries that happen in all the fields, you could say they're all cursed.
Dog, you're skipping ahead to the conclusion here, but...
Sorry.
No.
Sneak preview.
No, I asked your impressions. That's on me. But, yeah, like, this, like, on its surface, like, if you're looking for a cursed stadium, like, I would say this is some pretty solid evidence.
Yeah, no, if you're looking at baseline facts, that's a cursed stadium.
For sure. I would care to agree. So now we gotta really dig into what's the validity behind this theory. First things first, I just want to point out, because we have had issues like this in the past, all of the injuries laid out in these videos did actually happen at Paycor Stadium. Like, that's not made up. The facts of the case as they're laid out are actually correct. All of them were freak accidents that happened during clean play, with the notable exception of the traumatic head injury suffered by Antonio Brown, which was absolutely dirty, targeted, and horrible. That being said, everything else, like down to the Damar Hamlin injury, complete horrible accidents. The surface facts of this theory, I would say, they all check out. Right?
Yeah.
It's not, like, the most compelling thing I've ever heard, but if you're trying to say that this stadium is cursed because people get really badly injured here, I completely understand.
I guess it's more like people are getting unluckily injured. Like, it's not just like an injury, it's like a random freak injury.
Yeah, it's like a particularly bad injury.
But as a result of a hit, though, like, most of these are just like hits that result in injuries.
All of these are hits that result in injuries. None of these were like the turf monster.
Yeah, exactly. That's...
So the question remains, does this mean that the stadium is actually cursed? There are a couple more questions I think that we need answering before we can determine the conclusion. So the first one is, has there been any issues at the stadium other than injuries? I think that's a pretty logical next step if we're trying to figure out if a particular building is cursed.
No.
Well, I mean, a logical next step considering what we discovered during the FedEx Field Curse episode. I don't know if you remember, but the FedEx Field Curse did center around injuries, but there were also a lot of details of other unfortunate incidents to have taken place there. So I think the question is, can the same thing be said about Paycor Stadium?
Well, in that case, the answer is yes. I take that back.
Now you understand.
I switch it around, yes.
And just to confuse us a little more, the easy answer to my question is no.
Wait, hold up. So too many S's and No's flying around here.
That's what I'm saying. The question 2, can the same thing be said about Paycor Stadium? Have other weird small incidents happened here? The easy answer is no. There have not been near the same number of notable unfortunate incidents at Paycor than have happened at FedEx Field. That being said, the stadium itself is riddled with issues.
Yeah.
In 2024, USA Today released a ranking of 30 NFL stadiums, regularly used NFL stadiums. Do you want to guess where Paycor ranked?
It's got to be in the bottom 5.
Absolutely it is. Paycor was ranked 28 out of 30 stadiums. Pretty tough stuff. They only managed to edge out MetLife Stadium, home of the Giants and Jets, as well as Everbank Stadium, home of the Jaguars. Both of those completely check out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Some notable features about the stadium was that it is, quote, unappealing in the upper deck, and its location alongside the Ohio River gives visitors a quote-unquote good feel of Cincinnati, and that is the saddest claim I've ever seen a stadium make.
Well, no, like, I understand that sentiment, because have you ever been to Pittsburgh?
I've not. No.
Because Pittsburgh Stadium is literally right on the river, and it has the Robert Alomar Bridge right there, and it's like one of the most beautiful baseball stadium settings like ever. But I have also been to Cincinnati, and the Ohio River is...
That's what I'm saying. And the Ohio
Well,
River...
I mean, it's Cincinnati, so...
That is literally my point. The Ohio River is not particularly beautiful, and what is a good feel of Cincinnati? Like... To all our Cincinnati listeners out there, like, not trying to disparage, but like a good feel of Cincinnati, like that's your advertising point for your stadium. There must not be much going on there. All this being said, the only detail relevant to our purposes about Paycor Stadium is that it uses synthetic turf. This specific turf is called field turf core. Well, this is actually a rather controversial topic. Some people believe that poorly maintained artificial turf can be the primary reason as to why Paycor has seen so many bad injuries. To be honest, I'm not sure turf played a huge role in many of these injuries, but it must be mentioned as part of the investigation, because if I'm digging into it further, FedEx Field has real grass, so there's no turf issues there. And a lot of the stadiums that have like some of the highest ranked least injuries use turf. So I think I kind of swayed to the side of this that like real grass turf, it doesn't actually matter that much. What does matter is how properly maintained that turf is. And I could absolutely buy into the story that Paycor maybe doesn't maintain its turf very well.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, and that could definitely lead to some horrible injuries. A great example of this is that stadium in Brazil where a lot of injuries happen. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this.
Yeah, where Jordan Love got injured.
That's right.
At the start
Artificial
of the
turf.
season. Yeah, exactly.
Badly maintained artificial turf. So, moving on from the stadium itself, we must now ask the question, when did the idea of this curse come along? I actually think, counterintuitively, this might be one of the most important questions when trying to dig into the validity of this specific curse. And that's because the Paycor Stadium curse is a new theory, like very new as far as the things we talk about on the show go. People only began theorizing about this after the Damar Hamlin injury in early 2023. For this reason, it seems to me like the whole curse may come down to a fallacy and abductive reasoning. Now follow me down my philosophy rabbit hole for a second.
Okay, let's hear this.
In very short terms, abductive reasoning is when someone has an observation and then reasons backwards from there to find the most plausible explanation for said observation. In this case, the observation is that Damar Hamlin got severely injured at Paycor Stadium. People then went backwards from there and found others who have been severely injured at Paycor Stadium. They then use these pieces as evidence to conclude that the stadium is cursed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I will say, for all my philosophy heads out there, abductive reasoning is absolutely a valid form of reasoning. It's valid logic. You can have a good thing come out of abductive reasoning. It's not in and of itself incorrect or illogical. That being said, if you use it in this particular way, it can become a slippery slope, if you will.
Yeah, it's like if you use abductive reasoning and you conclude the wrong answer, you're still wrong. Like if you use abductive reasoning and you conclude the right answer, then it worked and then it's a useful skill.
Exactly. I've talked about syllogisms on this podcast before too, so I'm not going to get into the all dogs are blue metaphor again, but I'm sure some of our listeners have that recalled to them because this is very similar logic to that. And harkening back to what you, J. Cole, theorized when I asked you about your impressions earlier, the reason this is important is because it is unlikely that the stadium would have ever been labeled as cursed if Damar Hamlin's injury had not taken place there. It almost makes you wonder if this same case can be made about any NFL football stadium. Maybe if Damar Hamlin's injury happened at MetLife Stadium, this would be the MetLife Stadium curse episode we'd be talking about today. But this is just a hypothesis of my own creation. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, let's do that. The MetLife Stadium curse. I mean, did you see what happened to Aaron Rodgers? Only 4 downs into his first drive.
This is what I'm saying.
Curse, bro.
And I feel like you might be able to do this for pretty much anything. What if Damar Hamlin had gotten injured at any stadium. You could go back in the past and find horrible football injuries that have happened at many stadiums.
I'm going to correct you to all stadiums.
That being said, I will say, when I think of like the horrible injuries that have happened in modern NFL history, in my memory span of the NFL, many of them took place at Paycor. I will say, like, that is weird. Like, Damar Hamlin definitely comes to mind. Tua's concussion definitely comes to mind. But also, total recency bias. Both of those happened within the past 3 years.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened 10, 15 years ago. I don't remember that nearly as well.
You don't remember in 2005 when, what was it, Carson Palmer fucking tore his ACL?
I'm going to be honest, I don't. In the wild card, too, just carrying on the Bengals' playoff woes. So when it all comes down to it, I would say there are two primary differences between the Paycor Stadium curse and its much more well-known cousin, the FedEx Stadium curse. One is a difference in substance, and the other is a difference in explanation. The reason this is important is because I think it shows why Paycor Stadium curse is a little less juicy, maybe, than the FedEx Field curse.
Yeah, it's like, it's not a gold, but it's like a clear silver, sort of.
Exactly, whereas the FedEx Field Stadium...
obviously gold. Like,
world record-winning gold.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Like, that is
beautiful
a stadium curse to end all stadium curses.
Absolutely. So, when it comes to the substance, the difference in substance... the Paycor Stadium is missing many of the tantalizing anecdotes that makes the FedEx Field theory so compelling. For example, the time that the stands fell on Jalen Hurts, or the unknown substance that began leaking from the roof onto some fans. These are just some of the pieces that add texture and credence to the idea of FedEx Field being cursed. The second issue comes down to explanation. I would likely feel quite differently about this curse if the idea of it had existed and then Damar Hamlin got injured. That would be truly eerie. But because the order of operations was in reverse, where the injury precipitated the curse's claims, the whole theory becomes much more suspect.
Yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm. So now that we're coming to the end of this, do you have any final thoughts?
Football is really good at giving people injuries.
Honestly, that is one thing that me and you can absolutely agree upon. I know we have a lot of friendly debate on this podcast. I won't be coming at you for that one.
No.
I will end off this segment by saying that it looks like the Ohio Senate is set to approve an $184 million budget for renovations to Paycor Stadium. Here's hoping whatever is causing these injuries will also be solved with the improvements.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
then the curse will be gone.
There
This
you go.
this will truly be the test as to whether the curse is real. If the injuries survive their improvements, then we have a conversation on our hands.
There we go.
But before we move on from my section of this episode, I need to relay a couple wild stories I found in the process of researching for this episode. And this is why this episode is, partly titled Bengals Fans Are Fucking Crazy. The first story comes from an article I stumbled upon titled Cincy Fans Can Call Jerk Line to Report Unruly Behavior, published by the Associated Press. Pretty good title.
Yeah,
right?
Jerk line.
Jerk line. And it's not what it sounds like, I promise. The story, which hit the presses in 2006, lays out the Bengals' plan to have a hotline where you can call to complain about the bad behavior of other fans in the stadium. You can reach it at 513-381-JERK. The Bengals' director of development is quoted in the article speaking about how this is not meant to be for quote-unquote curse police, but for people who actually have to report threats, fights, or overly inebriated fans. There was actually a direct quote from this same guy, the director of development, where he said something along the lines of, when you put 65,000 people together, you're gonna have a few fights. It just seems like the Bengals have a few more fights than everyone else. This hotline they deemed was necessary after, a lot of complaints from the previous season. One fan, Jeannie Dittrich, is quoted in the article after bringing her 12-year-old son to a game. She had this to say.
We told him beforehand, you might see some drunk people. You might hear some swearing. But at the game, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to mar my son for the rest of my life by having him come to this game.
Those who are reported will receive a warning. If they do not heed this, punishments can range from having your season tickets revoked or even being arrested. This is some serious stuff the Jerk Hotline's coming out with.
Yeah.
That being said, they did anticipate getting some prank calls. Bob Bedinghouse, I'm so sorry, it's such a silly name.
Bob Bedingus.
Bob Bedingus or something like that. This is the director of development I mentioned earlier. He commented on the topic of prank calls.
If you get 6,000 people calling this line, hey, Ben Roethlisberger is a jerk, then it will become less effective, he said. The thing to remember is that we have caller ID on this line.
So, after reading this article and seeing the veiled threats about caller ID, I only had one choice. I called the hotline with the intention of letting them know that I think Ben Roethlisberger is a jerk.
No way that you actually called it.
The results were disappointing.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Your call cannot be completed as dialed or the number has been disconnected. Please check the number and dial again.
Pretty sad.
It's because you didn't include the one.
What one?
You always include, you gotta include the area code, bro.
I included the area code of 513.
like the country area code.
this
You
ain't
gotta
a-
add the one because you're calling the states.
That is fair. That was part of my theory that I was calling like the states from Canada. That might have been the issue. You know what?
They have
Pay
caller
attention.
ID and they knew it was a Canadian.
That's what I'm saying. They do it. Damn it. I fell into his fucking trap. Bob Bedingus got
He
me.
literally warned you
Bro.
and you still fell for it.
My ass got
10 out of 10.
Damn it. Okay, you know what? We gotta move on from here, because regardless of my failed attempt, I really did try. The story must go on. The first game that the Bengals had this hotline, which was the beginning of the 2006 season, they got about 100 calls. For the ones that were legitimate, the Bengals security made use of 38 cameras they had set up throughout the stadium to track down the unruly fan and deal with the situation accordingly. How terrifying is that? Like, think about the fact that AI is going to do all of that for them. Like, you're just going to be in the stadium, you're going to get a little too drunk, and all of a sudden the marshals are going to be like, I think you had a couple too many drinks. The AI told us.
Yeah, the AI told us that you're on your 7th bud.
How
You slow
crazy
down
is
there,
that?
bud.
Horrifying stuff. But I digress. While there was no comprehensive review of the hotline's efficacy, there was, without a doubt, an influx of prank calls.
Yeah.
On this topic, I found an article on Deadspin from 2008 titled Bengals Jerk Line Gets Its Chain Yanked, written by Dashiell Bennett. This article spoke about a coordinated campaign of Bengals fans who were all on a singular mission. This is the call to action they were spreading.
Wherever you are, call the jerk line at 513-381-JERK. Today, between now and 4 p.m., and report Mike Brown by saying, as a Bengals fan, Mike Brown is mentally and emotionally abusing me from his owner's box. Everyone should call once, say the above line, and hang up.
Brilliant plan.
That's so funny.
And for quick reference, Mike Brown is the owner of the Bengals.
Yeah, well, he wouldn't be wrong for reporting him for that specific reason. He
No.
is mentally and emotionally abusing them.
100%. But you know what's even better about this? The author of this article did his part on this mission. And this is what happened.
I called at 104 and talked to a very nice lady. She said thank you, and I said you're welcome. It sounded like she may have heard that line before. The jerk line employees had to have had a meeting about this. When I called, the lady completely expected what I was going to say. It was very polite. I called 40 times, starting at 7 a.m. while I had coffee, and then 15 minutes until the end of the game. I called 5 times. The 5th time I called, I asked why nothing had been done yet about my previous request. She just said they were looking into the situation, asked if there was anything else. As of the time of this posting, Mike Brown has not been detained.
That's
gold.
This is the glory of this podcast. This is the exact sort of story that I dream of digging up.
Yeah.
This is beautiful stuff.
This is NFL fans at their best.
Absolutely. A coordinated campaign to go onto your team's jerk hotline, which, why does that exist to begin with? To troll the owner. It's crazy.
So good.
If those AI cameras were doing their job, they would have taken Mike Brown out ages ago.
They would have seen what he has been doing to the fans.
Exactly. It can measure the emotional distress that it's causing each fan in that room.
Well, soon AI will.
100%. Personally, I love this story, and I think it's a much more fun way to express my view that Bengals fans are fucking crazy than chatting about that guy who headbutted another fan last year, because that was just nasty and not funny at all.
No, that was bad.
But I bring you to my conclusion of my thesis of crazy Bengals fans, and I truly do hope that all of you take it as a compliment.
Alrighty, welcome to my end segment where I bring you fun football and crazy football. And this week, I'm giving you draft football because the NFL draft is this week. And you got to know what's going on, you know?
100%. And we do promise to update you guys on what happens with the 24th pick in the 6th round or whatever.
Yeah, we will tell you who ends up drafting with that pick. But this is about a different pick that I got for you, okay? So this is about the time the Raiders accidentally drafted the wrong guy.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, in the 2023 draft, in the 2nd round, the Raiders are on the clock with the 70th overall pick. Going into the draft, the Raiders made it known that they were looking to strengthen their defensive line, and they did just that. They selected Byron Young, 70th overall. Just one problem. They accidentally meant to draft a different Byron Young who plays the exact same position.
I'm sorry, what? And how were they meant to differentiate between the two?
Both played in the SEC, and they were both about 40 pounds apart. They both played on the defensive line. The defensive end from Tennessee was considered an excellent prospect, expected to go in the 2nd round. Byron Young, tackle from Alabama, was much less heralded, still expected to go in the draft, but 2nd round was definitely a reach.
Man must have been hyped the fuck up.
Oh, he must have been going insane when he found out he got drafted 70th overall.
Yeah, for sure.
To make things even better, 7 picks later, the LA Rams selected the Byron Young from Tennessee, who the Raiders wanted to pick.
That makes sense.
Yeah. This makes the first and only time that 2 American sports players with the same name were taken in the same round.
Really?
Yeah.
That's super interesting, actually. That's a great fact.
Yeah. So the Raiders' Byron Young only played 6 games for the team before being released this past August. The other one has converted to a linebacker, was named All-Pro Rookie First Team, and has carried that production into last season, where he became one of the best young defensive players in football.
Wow, the Raiders stink.
The Raiders got fucked.
How were they meant to make the distinguishment on the draft card?
Maybe by team, by weight. They picked the wrong Byron Young.
And do you happen to know whether they put the wrong information down on the card, or if the NFL assumed that they wanted one and not the other? Like, it must have been a fuck up on the parts of the Raiders. If there was any clarification that needed happening, the Raiders, or sorry, the NFL would have asked the Raiders, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there's something. I don't know it, but I'm sure it's out there. There's some information.
And it's crazy.
But yeah, that they got fucked.
There's two outcomes from this. Either some like head coach or like top coordinator was like, oopsies guys, sorry, or an intern got fired and never worked in the NFL again.
Yeah.
Which is crazy stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully this NFL draft will be as exciting as that one.
Honestly, draft season's great because you get all the interviews with these young guys who are completely untested. Some weird reporter is going to ask them some weird question, and we're going to have a Players in Their Beliefs episode.
Yeah.
So,
Also, just because I have to do it, there have been rumors. I have to mention his name just in case something happens. There have been rumors that Kirk Cousins will be traded during the draft. I had to throw his name out there in case he does, because that would be crazy.
I'm honestly convinced that we're keeping this man's career going.
Yeah, honestly.
He'd
You're
be
welcome,
nothing
Kirk.
without us.
Yeah, you're welcome. You system quarterback.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
If you enjoyed, please consider telling a friend or leaving a 5-star review. It really helps to grow the podcast.
You can also reach us by email at fbconspiracies@gmail.com.
A special thanks to Blaze for the music.
Join us next time for more football conspiracies. Am I fucking wrong?
No, you
This
were
guy
amazing.
is a fucking overweight Lando Norris. Like, no shame, but damn, look at that man.